Hey, it's Mirna from Happiness Academy. Welcome to the Happiness Academy podcast, a place where you can discover practical, simple, yet effective tools from the science of positive psychology. You're at the right place if you're looking to live a life of well-being and joy, staying resilient when facing any challenges, and incorporating a sense of meaning in things you do. Ready? Let's dive in. On your request, we are talking about Vipassana, the 10 days silent retreat at which you learn and practice the Vipassana technique of meditation. Well, they call it retreat, I call it a boot camp. It's a tough 10 days to do. It's a bit of a mental challenge and it's definitely a lot of learning. It's very much worth it to learn to work with your mind better, but also be more aware of your body, build more self-control, and build new tools for resilience and mindfulness. However, it is a tough experience as well, and you definitely need to be firm in your decision to go for it to ensure that you actually stay with it and gain some value out of it. So in this video, I'm sharing more about the experience itself. How does it work? Look like? How does it work? What do you actually do there? What's the overall? Maybe also what are some of the challenges and overall experience of attending a bootcamp? I will also record a separate video with very practical tips once you decide to go of what you should bring or keep in mind. But this one is really about the experience itself, so you can also judge for yourself. Is that something for you? Or maybe it is, but not right now. Or maybe it is and you need to go right now. To be honest, you can't go right now because you need to apply 3 months in advance and they tend to get super booked. So you really do need to apply the moment the application's open. But more on that also at the end of the video. So I've been to Vipassana retreat, a bootcamp, twice, but in both times a while back. First time in 2011. And that was quite a transition period in my life. I lived in Amsterdam for 3 years before that. I moved back to Croatia a few months before the Vipassana. And there was a lot of changes in my personal life and also in my work life and a lot of decisions. And I felt like, I need some time to get grounded and settle and kind of restart with this whole transition. And that was interesting because I heard about Vipassana a year or two before, I think around the year before, from a girl who went, and I knew how the experience looks like. And I was kind of, that's great, I really want to go, but I don't have the time. And it was really like taking 10 days, or like 11, 12 when you count in for travel, from work to go for 10 days Vipassana, when you can do all this other, travel and things with your days of vacation. I just felt it was not it's not the right time to do it. But then at the time when I moved back to Croatia, and when it was like this new beginning and so on, suddenly I was in this mood like, okay, I need to go. So I think that's something that might happen for you as well. I think it's really cool that from this podcast you can discover how experience looks like and feel like, and does it resonate with you, or it looks like too tough, or it looks like great, but it doesn't fit into your life right now, or maybe you recognize that you need to go right away, or maybe you recognize you should never go, it's really not your thing. And that's the goal of this podcast as well, to give you a bit more tangibility to that experience and to help you also think do you want to go, when do you want to go, why do you want to go, and so on. So the second time I went, it was in the end of 2016. Yeah. And this July, I'm going again in July 2023 after 7 years. And I'm wondering how will it be this time. I'm very curious because first 2 times they were very similar, but also a little bit different. So in this podcast, I'm sharing with you more about how the experience was the first 2 times. And if this time something very different happens, I shall record a new podcast about it. No. So, first of all, what is Vipassana? Vipassana is a meditation technique, quite famous, quite recognized, and it has roots in Buddhism, but it has nothing to do with religion in its format and in the way it works. Same with the bootcamp or retreat. There is nothing to do with religion. And Vipassana means to see things as they really are. Or you could also translate it as the insight into the nature of reality. to take a moment to process that. So insight into the nature of reality and to truly see the things as they really are. It is also called an insight meditation or mindfulness meditation. And in this case, what nature of reality means is that everything is always changing. And because everything is eternally and always changing, there is no need really to attach to any of our feelings or current experiences, neither good ones nor the bad ones. So being less attached gives us more freedom, including freedom from suffering. And that's in the core of Buddhism if you ever were reading about it or learning about it. So suffering happens, according to Buddhism, for two reasons. Or because we're experiencing something we don't like and we cannot escape it, we're stuck with it. Or because we are liking something a lot, but we cannot have it, or we are suffering because we lose it, or we are afraid of losing it. So basically, suffering is the consequence of attachment to our experience, sometimes to negative experience, sometimes to a pleasant experience. And when we recognize that all of the experiences are transient and always changing, then we also recognize that it makes no sense to, be stressed about it, basically. Now, this might sound like I gave you a bit of a spoiler here, sharing the main point of insight from Vipassana with you. But I do have to tell you, it is a totally different story when you reach that insight through your practice. I was reading about these ideas before and I was familiar with them, and they stayed on mental level very much. And with Vipassana, they really landed a bit more on that intuitive level and almost physical level. And you could say, you in a way, you get to understand it deeper. You integrate somehow this attitude a bit more. So, enough about philosophy. Let's talk about the side of Vipassana, the experience itself. So first of all, what do you get out of Vipassana? Why would you join in the first place? What are some of the benefits? So I would say what it really teaches you is how to work with your mind. It's a meditation, but above everything, to me, it's also mental technique. And it teaches you how to be more resilient, more focused, more strong, more patient, how to deal with any emotions or experiences better. And when you leave, you also leave with nice feeling of being peaceful and grounded. Vipassana is also what Yuval Harari, if you know, the author of Sapiens, does every year, and he swears by it that that's the reason for his clarity in his thinking. And I must say, from his books, his clarity in his thinking is pretty high level. So that's one of the references you could say. Oh, and definitely in these 10 days, you get off any addiction, because no coffee, no sugar, no meat, no exercise, that's a tough one, no phone, no internet. So you really get to kind of detach from all of these things. I hope you're hearing me well, because I'm recording this on a very rainy, stormy, thundery day, and there is a lot of background rain and thunder. I hope you're not picking up on that, but if you do, just to know what's happening. I'm not under shower, it's the rain and thunder outside. So how does Vipassana experience then look like? First of all, we need to talk about the schedule. The schedule is a little bit brutal. You get up at 4 in the morning, you start with the first meditation at 4:30, you meditate for an hour and a half. Usually you meditate in a common meditation hall. There is a gender separation, but you are there with many other people, although not talking, as it's silent retreat. And then if you're an old student who came again, sometimes you also get an option to go meditate in your room or outside and so on. But initially you meditate in the common hall, and you need to show up there for all the meditations. You have your designated spot and you're kind of anchored there, and that's your place of work. Then at 6 you get breakfast. Which for me was one very grounding, cozy part of the day, because both times I went in winter, and breakfast was, as all meals are fairly light and they're always vegan, but it felt very nourishing and very supportive, like somebody's taking care of you and somebody prepared this for you. For me, it was really nice experience of, even though the food was quite light, the experience of having that food provided for you by someone who invests their effort and positive energy and emotions into it was really, really nice. So at 6, you have breakfast. You have a little break after the breakfast. Usually you use it for whatever, shower or 5 minutes of peace from everything. And then soon after that, you continue with the meditations. You go with meditations until lunch. Lunch is at noon. And it's again vegetarian, fairly light. You eat in the common hall, but you have position where you're facing the wall and your food, or maybe you're facing someone from other students, but you're not interacting with them in any way. So you're really mindful about your food and you're really kind of focused on whatever you're doing and experiencing. After lunch, again, you have a little break and then just a lot of meditation in the afternoon. 5 p.m. Short break for tea. If you're a new student, you get some fruit as well. If you're an old student, no food afternoon. And after the tea break, you continue with meditation, some more until I think around 8 p.m. And then at 8 p.m., it's time for the evening discourse. And evening discourse is something you're listening to. And you can go to the group who listens it in English or the group who listens it in language of the country in which you are. Or you can also get your own headphones and the recording if you're alone from your country, like I was the first time, because they try to provide it for you in your native language if possible, and it's recommended you listen to it in your native language. And the discourse is just some, teachings and ideas and things that they share with you about where you might be right now within your experience, what might be some questions that you're facing, and maybe some dilemmas. And it kind of helps you a little bit to reason and reason, to understand a bit better what is happening with your experience right now. So for most of the day, you don't think so much, but you really try to mentally focus and do the tasks and the meditations. But then in the evening, you get that discourse where kind of things start to make a bit more sense, and where you try to understand also the meta level of what is actually happening. And then at 10, it's lights out, sleep time, or even 9:30, I'm not sure anymore. So within that, the retreat itself, it's silent, which means you don't talk. Well, basically, silent just means you don't get to talk. No. In other words, all the participants, all the attendees are sworn to silence, or in other words, are not talking, and you're to be silent the whole week, the whole 10 days. And it is important that you don't communicate. So it's not silence like you don't talk, but it's silence like you don't communicate in any way. You don't do eye contact with other people. You don't hold door for them and nod politely. You don't do any, body language, signs or whatever. You simply don't communicate. You focus inwards and that's it. However, there is a lot of talking in Vipassana, and that is mainly that for most of meditations, you listen to guidance from recordings that guide you step by step through the technique and remind you of what are you practicing, sometimes giving you some more instructions or explanation and so on. So there is a lot of guidance in that sense. And then if there is crisis of any kind, you have 2 points of contact. One is a teacher. You are allowed to schedule a 10-minute conversation with a teacher whenever throughout the week, whenever you have some doubts or dilemmas about the technique, or are you doing it properly, are you doing something wrong, or you have any struggles in terms of meditation itself. And then you can talk to them. You don't have to be silent for those 10 minutes. And then the other point of contact are servers. Servers are volunteers, a wonderful crew who finish their Vipassana at least once, and then they applied to support other students, and they do the cooking and some of the logistics, and they're there to help you with anything, any emergencies, like if there is something regarding your health or some problem you might have that has to do with logistics. You're not really encouraged to go, to them with every little thing, like I forgot my socks, I need some tissues or whatever, but it's really like if something happens, you can do it. There is a point of contact. And in terms of technique itself, what are we actually doing? How does it actually look like? Now, I don't want to tell you too much because I don't want to make a spoiler out of it, because it's really important that you go through experience yourself and that you really you could experience it in many different ways, and that's why it's not also very encouraged to tell you a lot in advance and and to give you some expectations, because then expectations can also sabotage you in your own experience. But what I can say is the first 3 days you focus only on one technique called Anapana, which is a simple breathing exercise, and you do just that for 3 weeks in order to sharpen your focus and your senses. And then for the other 7 days, you really practice Vipassana technique itself, you try, to work on it enough that by the day 7, you get a bit deeper with it and reach different insights. But that's something that can be very individual, where it takes you and what your insights are. Whatever it is, you are strengthening your mental muscle a lot in terms of focus and discipline and patience and so on. And in terms of technique itself, I can only say also that it's related to noticing these subtle changes and all the different sensations in your body, with focus on how everything is changing and with noticing the subtle changes in your experience. Now, about the silence, I'll told you pretty much everything. Not so silent in the end, but silent for you. And honestly, that's really nice. It's really nice break from the busy world. For me, it was even maybe a bit, I was like, why do they have to talk all the time with the recordings? I want even more silence. But that is really calming and nice. And personally, I can't say that I missed talking, not at all. I really enjoyed the opportunity to disconnect from that way of communication. But of course, that could also be something that's a bit individual. Maybe it's because I normally talk too much, so the contrast was welcome. Okay, I have only 3 more short points. One is on the pricing, one is on coping with tough moments, and one is how will you know if you should go. So on the side of pricing, the whole thing is a worldwide organization and it's donation based. And with donation, you are invited that you don't give donation to kind of pay back for your own experience, but your experience was a gift from someone else to you, and you're encouraged to give donation if you want to provide similar gift for someone in the future, kind of like that. So kind of like paying it forward type of a thing. Donation is given at the end, and there is no fixed price to it and so on. Now, the other big part of the price is the 11 days of your life where you really have to disconnect from everything. That can be a little bit tricky to manage. And also one thing that is important in terms of planning and pricing is that you really need to be quick with your applications, and you do need to plan it a bit more than 3 months ahead in order to catch your spot and to apply. So this thinking in advance is also a bit of a price. Now, on the side of coping, yes, there can definitely be tough moments on Vipassana, and here are some things that can help you cope, at least that helped me cope. If you discover more, let me know. First of all, knowing your why. Thinking, why do you want to go? What do you want to gain out of it? And sticking with that why and having some purpose, that can be really, really helpful because you can fall back to it in difficult moments. Second tip is to really decide to commit and give it a fair chance, because you're here for 10 days and only 10 days. It's such a limited time in comparison to your whole life, and you will have insights and discoveries only if these 10 days you really give it a chance. You kind of give your best and you really try and stay with it. So I don't know for you, but to me it really helps to commit when I know it's limited amount of time. It's not like forever, but I'm here for 10 days, and for these 10 days, indeed, I can try. Another thing that can help you a lot is to just really listening to the method and using and following the method. Because the method itself is also about coping and about recognizing the difficulties and using the chance to observe any difficult emotions that show up or any mental challenges that show up, and literally applying technique on those emotions and techniques. Now, another thing that really helps you with coping is to make sure that you really leave everything else behind and close it well. I will talk about this also in video about practical tips, but it's basically about letting everyone know you're not available for these 10 days, knowing nobody will search for you, knowing nobody will, be worried about you and so on. So closing everything well before you come. And if there's some emergency, people can still reach you through servers. So if something is like dramatic is happening, you will get notified by the crew about it. So you don't need to worry that something might have been happening that you don't know about. You can really take your space. Another thing that can help with tough moments is being gentle with yourself, of course, and not being like having too high perfectionist expectation, but really be curious about the method. Curiosity really, really helps. And then the biggest one, for me at least, the thing that really helped me the most, apart from the method of Vipassana, was to turn on the appreciation. Like the place in Italy where I went, it's so beautiful. The environment is really beautiful. The nature is really beautiful. And even though it was winter, just savoring that beauty of nature, even though you're not spending a lot of time in it, you just kind of pass through and see the view while you're going to the meditation hall. But savoring that beauty of nature really nourished my mood and my spirit in a way. So really tuning on, noticing the beauty around you. And then also appreciating the nourishing food and the fact that somebody did prepare it all for you and that somebody is there just to help you go through that experience. But then also catching the small moments of self-care, shower and just taking time between meditations, the short breaks to just kind of allow yourself to do whatever you feel like doing, like staring into the ceiling or whatever, showering or thinking about whatever you want to think. And then also for other people, appreciation for the rest of the group and the community who are also kind of brave enough to jump into this same struggle as you. And then finally, also appreciation just for that opportunity to be here, because to take the time, to have the freedom, to have the possibilities to join an experience like this, it's really a privilege and one that we can really enjoy and savor and appreciate. And finally, by the way, these coping tips, they were really good tips for any other difficult situation. So do pick up some of those. And allow me to explore the last question for today, which is, how will you know if you should go? No, I think you will know. So in other words, if you're now in this stage and you're like, I really don't know if I should go, and you're writing down pluses and minuses and you're this kind of sounds interesting, but I don't know, I don't really have the 10 days like I was. I don't really have the 10 days, or I'm not really 100% sure, I'm a little bit indecisive. Then probably this is not the right timing for you to go. Although it probably means you will want to go once because it's appealing to you, it speaks to you, but at the same time you don't feel committed and ready just yet. And that's okay. Because it also means that maybe you're not ready to stay there for 10 days and really, go with it. So you do want to go when you feel ready. The times of sort of a transition in your life are really nice times for that. But also any time is useful, to be honest. I think now when you know more about how the experience looks like and what to expect, and you know about the tough sides of it, but maybe also something appeals to you in it as well, I think this will be enough of insights that when you actually choose that you might want to go, that you recognize if that's the right experience for you or not. Now, if you have any questions you would like me to answer about the Vipassana of any kind, practical or experiential, or what about this, don't be shy, shoot them over. You can always post them in the podcast comments, you can post them in the YouTube video comments. The best way to reach me is shooting me an email. If you're on Happiness Academy newsletter, that means to simply reply on any of the emails, or through Instagram messages. Don't be shy to share questions. If they're interesting for others, I'll maybe do a podcast or write a newsletter about them. So questions are always very, very welcome. This video was also a result of a question, or this podcast was also a result of a question about sharing more about Vipassana. And as I said, I'm also linking the other video with more practical tips once you decide to go. Now, if you're very up for mindfulness, but a bit different style and different flavor, another experience of not a boot camp, but more of a retreat, a learning retreat, that you can join is the one we do at Happiness Academy, which is the Learning Getaway on mindfulness happening in Istria in Croatia. I will link it in the description of podcast as well. And on that one, we immerse ourselves for a week in mindfulness as well, but much more on the side of savouring, enjoying life, exploring different interesting tools, meaningfully and deeply connecting with others, learning and discovering more about ourselves. So kind of softer, more playful, and more a bit of adventurous approach, less of a boot camp. Only you know which experience resonates with you this year. No. And I'm also cooking up and preparing a short and sweet mindfulness workshop, or a course you could say, which will be available in on-demand format. So it'll be a set of pre-recorded videos where I'll share with you many mindfulness exercises and diverse approaches to mindfulness and teach you many short and sweet tools. So if you're curious about that one, stay tuned on Happiness Academy newsletter. Or depends when are you listening this, maybe also check on Happiness Academy website because maybe it's there already. No. And finally, I'm also linking under this podcast the ebook with some short and practical exercises on the side of mindfulness. So if you want to explore the field a little bit more, but are not quite ready for the whole Vipassana thing just yet, check out some of those exercises or alternative ways of learning. Now, I wonder who is going to Vipassana next. Thank you for exploring this topic with me. I hope you found some exciting ideas and tools that you will use already today. Remember, they only work if you put them in practice, but then they make all the difference. If you like Happiness Academy podcast, do leave us a rating and a review. It will be really helpful. And if you haven't done it yet, click on the links in the episode description to discover free materials and valuable resources to dive in deeper. See you in the next episode or at the Happiness Academy newsletter.